Good morning and welcome to Velocio's Payroll Year-End Readiness webinar today. We will get started in just a few moments. At this point, you should see a screen introducing the webinar. If you are having any issues seeing that screen, then please, by all means, let us know. Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Sage 100cloud Payroll Year-End Readiness. My name is Lori Ramsey, and I look forward to helping you through the steps for year-end with the assistance of others on my team. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We'll be answering questions throughout the presentation. We'll also be following up after the presentation to answer any questions you may have. We're recording today's session. Everyone will receive a copy tomorrow in a follow-up email as we reach out to you. During our 2018 year-end payroll webinar, we will walk you through a step-by-step detail for completing the year-end process. We'll review both the legacy and steps in the new version, which is referred to as Payroll 2.0. In this session, you'll also learn which version of Sage 100 Cloud is supported for 2018 and 2019 payroll updates, what updates are expected, and we will show you how to access online resources available to assist in the process. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Alan Neergarth. Alan is a principal consultant at Velocio and enjoys helping clients expand the use of their Sage solution to help their businesses grow. At this point, I would like to transition over to Alan.
Great, thanks, Lori. Everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, we're going to get right. To it. This is for focusing on Sage 100, Sage 100 Cloud Payroll, and this is going to be the first year that everybody attending the session may not actually be running the same payroll program. So we're going to focus on both what we call the legacy payroll and the payroll 2.0. So go ahead and get right into it. We're going to go through basically the steps involved for doing year-end for both modules, and that'll include some of the housekeeping things that you have to do for your systems. So first off, for Sage 100, the versions that are actually supported this year for making updates available are 2016, 2017, and 2018. For those of you on 2016, you want to be on product update 5. On 2017, we want to be on product update 1 or higher. And on 2018, we have to be on at least product update 2 or higher in order to get the IRDs that'll be applicable for 1099s if you're doing accounts payable and 1099s in the system. For tax table updates, for 2016 and 2017, they are supposed to be available December 19th, so I think that would make it next week. So we really won't be doing anything before the 19th when both the IRDs and the tables are supposed to be available. And for those that are on Payroll 2.0, you note that it doesn't require a tax table update because it's now built in. So for the legacy payroll, there's basically two approaches to doing payroll for year end. And so I'm going to address both of these in the next few slides. So the first method would be you want to run payroll in the new year in 2019 before you're actually ready to process and finalize year-end reports for 2018. So the steps will be a little bit different than if you have the luxury of just finishing up the W-2s and the year-end reporting before you actually have to run your first payroll next year. So the most common one for everybody is they're not ready with W-2s and year-end reports before 2019 rolls around. And as you know, you can't run 2 years in the payroll program. So here's the steps that we'll go through. That you have to go through in order to basically effectively do year end. So first and foremost, because there's going to be an installation involved, we're going to make a backup of the Mask 90 folder. We always do that when we're applying updates. Next, we're going to download and install the appropriate Sage product update. So if you're on like 2016, something other than update 5, we'd install update 5. Same with 2017. We would then download and install the 2018 IRD, which will have anything specific to payroll in it. We will then next download and install any enhancements for the updates from independent software provider. So some of you all have the multiple local tax enhancement. So before we can actually do the payroll updates, we want to make sure that the company providing the enhancement has their code up to date for the 2018 requirements. Next, once that's applied, we'll download and install the tax table update files, and that'll be what's going to be required for processing the first payroll in next year. Before we do payroll, before we do year end in the current company, we're going to make a copy of the live payroll company to a backup payroll company. So if you have one or more companies, you do it for each company. One of the things you want to do in the copy company is you want to ensure you have the company name, address, and tax ID values populated in the company maintenance screen. And you're really only required to copy the payroll and the general ledger modules. You don't have to copy the remaining of the modules that you may be using in the system. So the tax table update that had been downloaded will be applied, and if there's any local tables, you will need to manually update the tables as normal. Most of these steps should be familiar with a lot of companies, but because they've been the same pretty much for the last several years. But in any event, it's always good to review. So once we've ensured that we have a copy of our live company, then we can perform year end in the live company. Because that'll set the stage for clearing out the values, setting everything back to 0 for the start of the year, so that we can then run our first period in the live company. All right, so you've run a period or two. You're ready to do. You're actually ready to file, W-2s and do your year-end reporting. So what are what are the steps for that? So one of the things we need to do, because the FICA limits are different, so we're going to reinstall the 2018 tax table or manually reset the limits using tax table maintenance. We're going to switch to the backup company that we made, the copy company. And then from the reports menu, We're going to run the remainder of the required or desired year-end reports from the backup company. So that could include the payroll check history report, quarterly pay recap, quarterly tax report, benefit accrual, any of the reports from the reports menu that you want to have a record of at the year end or confirm before you press on with the period end. And then from the period end menu, there's a couple of reports you would typically want to run before you launch the W-2s. So we're going to run the remainder of the reports from the backup company, the quarterly government report, and maybe the total employee totals verification report, to use that to as a cross-reference report for some of the other data and some of the other reports. So once you're confident that what you're looking at is real numbers and everything's up to date, no employees are missing, then from the period end menu, we can launch the federal e-filing and reporting. And as you know, Sage no longer provides the reports in the system for W-2s and so on. So that's all done through the Atrix program, which will automatically launch when you launch the federal e-filing and reporting. Now, when you launch, the first time you launch federal e-filing and reporting, you will be prompted for an update because there will have been updated forms and tables for the Atrix software. So usually do the automatic update on those each time we launch it. And then if you haven't run the program in a while, you're given the option of doing a test for, say, up to 25 employees. If you just want to refamiliarize yourself with the software, that won't actually update any tables or save any work for future work. And then you can step through the process. The other thing is once you're comfortable and refamiliarized yourself with the Atrix if needed, you can then run it again for all of your employees and run it live. So you'll run the all required federal reports, state reports. You'll answer the questions of whether you want to print them hard copy to the forms that you would have already purchased, or whether you actually want to take advantage of the Atrix service to actually process electronically. So once again, that's all part of the whole overall process of completing the W-2 process and the forms and the 941s and so on. So once you're done with the Atrix, then you're going to reinstall the 2019 tax table update that's already on the system, and then continue payroll as normal back in your live company. So whether it's pay period 1, 2, 3, or what have you. So that's the process for the legacy. It should be kind of familiar for everybody that's currently using payroll, but maybe it's a good time to ask if there's any questions at this point in time. And it looks like everybody's on mute. I'm going to unmute all participants at this point and see if that works. It doesn't look like on my side. It doesn't look like everybody was unmuted. So if there's any questions, use the little chat window in the webinar, and we can monitor that.
Yeah, there's a raise your hand feature as well. If you use any of those, we can certainly help you.
So the next process is we're still on the legacy payroll, the steps for payroll year end. And this is for those that have the luxury of completing the last payroll and they're ready to run W-2s before the first payroll is done for next year. And so the first part of the process is the same. We're going to make a backup of the Mass 90 folder. We're still going to download and install the 2018 IRDs. We'll download and install any after having downloaded and installed any updates to the 2016 or 2017 programs. Then we'll download any enhancements that are required and update those. and then basically following the same process as before, using the period end launch. We'll run the standard reports that we want to run first before we actually launch federal e-filing and reporting. To run the W-2s as I described in the previous process. So once we're done running through the standard reports, the Atrix online reports, typically you might make a copy of the live payroll company to a backup payroll company so that you can have access to previous year's information. And once again, you do general ledger and payroll for that. Once you're confident that everything's done, you can perform year end in the live payroll company. We would then download, and if we hadn't already downloaded, then we download, and then we'd install the 2019 tax table update files, and then manually edit the tax tables if needed, and you're ready to process payroll for the first quarter of 2019 in the software. So it's a little bit easier if you have the ability to do that, but the steps are essentially the same. All right, we're going to press on throughout the rest of the slides. I've got some information that I've copied from Sage's knowledge base, where they also have some pretty detailed information. If you have any questions on this and you're tackling it on your own, you can go out to Sage's knowledge base, and we're going to look at a little bit more of this later on. But just here's an example of Sage's recap of the process that we just went through. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but we are making a copy of this slide deck available to anybody who wants it. So just let us know, and you'll get a copy of all these. And a lot of these have links directly to the Sage knowledge base area.
Alan, we'll send that out to everyone.
Okay,
they don't have to request it. We'll get it.
Okay, great. All right, so the legacy, that's like I say, should be familiar with pretty much everybody that's got payroll. I don't think there's anybody on the call where they just started running payroll this year, but we do have a few on the call where they've upgraded to 2018, and with 2018. For those that were running payroll, you got a new payroll program, a completely rewritten program called Payroll 2.0. And so a few of those on the call have gone through the conversion process with us. And so we'll address now the steps for that. So Payroll 2.0, you'll be on, that's only available for 2018 and higher. There's an update 5 that's the most current release for 2018, and you're going to want to be on update 5 if you aren't already there before we go through the year-end process. Payroll 2.0 does not require a tax table update because the tax information is pushed down via the payroll tax update within the software. So as you know, you no longer have to actually edit any tax tables themselves. And there is a process for telling the software, which tax tables, which taxing jurisdictions that you'll be using. There is a separate payroll update in addition to the Sage 100 update. Is payroll update 2.19, and it will have changes for Ohio locals. So we want to make sure we've got that installed for everybody in our state before we actually get into the year end. And that also is supposed to be available on December 19th. So first off, the company backups are no longer needed with 2018. Not to be confused with making maybe a copy of the Mass 90 folder before we apply program updates, but it is not necessary to make a copy company in order to process payroll in 2019 before we're done with payroll in 2018. So that's the first thing that's the big difference that jumps out at us. And what that's going to do is when it comes time for conversion in the future, we no longer, have to worry about, converting a half a dozen of historical payroll companies for that. So as I mentioned, you can make entries in 2019 for first payroll before closing the year in 2018 if needed. So we're going to review local taxes and matrix carefully to ensure both wages and withholding are populated. So part of the steps, we've noticed in some of our testing, because Atrix does now have the built-in functionality for as many locals per pay period as you need. We've noticed that we always want to carefully check all of the columns in the Atrix to make sure that they're all populated with the values that are needed. And we can work individually in one-off situations with that. The other thing is before we do the year end, we want to check the effective dates and rates for unemployment that might apply. These are now date driven. So, if you knew your 2019 unemployment rates today, you could plug those into the system with an effective date of January 1, and you'd have it done. It'll automatically switch over to the January 1 rates as soon as you do your first payroll for 2019. And then or even if you had to, even if you did it like the 29th or something like that. Also, check your history settings. The system now forces you to keep at least 4 years, but I think most companies keep 7 to 10. So with 2.0, what do we do? We're gonna back up the Mass 90 folder. We're going to download, install the 2018 PU5 if you're not already on it. We're going to download and install the 2018 IRD, which actually will apply for accounts payable, not so much for payroll. And then we're going to download and install the payroll 2.19 update. So there's really 3 updates that will probably be applying, at least 2. Run your final 2018 payroll as needed. Run and process the year-end reports from both the reports and the period-end menu as we described above in the previous steps. The reports themselves haven't changed. The names, I think, are even pretty much the same. And the same reports are found in the period-end menu as well as the federal, state, and tax reporting in the period-end menu. So once you've verified your reports, you're ready to run the W-2s, you run and process your federal and state tax reporting in the period end menu, which launches the Atrix program. It's pretty much the same as the legacy module at that point. And then, once all your reports and forms have been filed appropriately, including the 1094s and the 1095s if you need to do those, you can complete your period end for the calendar year for 2018 in the 2018 system. So that's very similar to the payroll module now functions like the general ledger or the other modules where you're not ready to do a general ledger year end until 2 or 3 months in or whenever. Well, with payroll, you can do 2019 until you're maybe done your final reporting in February, and then you can do your year end in 2018. It lets you update it that way. And I threw this slide in just for an idea. Once you do a year end, there are, based on your history settings, there are history tables that may be purged of data that's older than a certain date. And the reason I show them the screen is if any of you all have done any custom reports in payroll in the legacy module, you notice the file names are pretty cryptic. PR1, PR2, what do those mean? Well, these are the examples of file names that are now found in the revised version of payroll. And so, payroll, history header, payroll history detail, they're pretty self-explanatory. So if you ever need to do any custom reporting, it does make it a little bit easier to at least figure out what tables you're pulling your information from. So, that honestly, that covers the actual steps that we'd be going through for performing year end. And as as those of you that worked with us, we like our clients to be as self-sufficient as they choose or care to be. That means if you want to, do payroll year end unattended, you can follow the steps that we've shown. And if you do want to do a little bit more proactive work, Sage does provide quite a lot of help, both online and also in the modules. So if you're not familiar with one avenue of online help, it's Sage City, which can be accessed directly from the launcher. In the information panel, there's Sage City, and there's a couple of links in there that talk about year end. In the module itself, if you go to help, and we can go to index search, we can find like PR period end, or even just PR. It'll get you some help. So I'll give you some examples of what that looks like here. So if you click on the Sage City link, they've got a Sage 100 year end center. And so not only for payroll, but maybe talking about general ledger or other modules for year end, but it's mostly dealing with payroll. And so this is an example of what the screenshot looks like when you go to. We've included a link down at the bottom that you'd be able to link to from the PowerPoint deck. But you click on the payroll, button, and it will take you to payroll period end year processing, and actually takes you to a knowledge base article that specifically addresses some Q&A that you might have before you get involved with it. If you're in the launcher, if you're in Sage 100 directly, Sage 100cloud directly, you can click on help and go into help topics, and then do a search on PR period end, and it'll come up with some internal help, like for example, documentation and resources, and it'll come up with some internal help that will take you directly to, okay, what are some help topics related to payroll? And these are basically the same screens that you get into if you use the F1 button to go into help when you're in the fields and data entry. So as I said, the Sage has done a pretty good job. They're increasing their availability of online help resources. Some of the links might even take you to YouTube videos if you follow them. Another thing about being ready for year end, though, is forms. So for those of you that haven't already ordered the forms, you can get to links for forms directly from, if you're on the newer versions, 2016 and higher, you can get to directly from the Sage program. There's a link to forms, and it will take you to a page that looks something kind of like this. And here is talking about the W-2 and W-3s and the 1095s. It also, the same location will get you to the 1099s if you need to do that as part of year end. So I put a little link. If we were to click on that same form section for AP, it'll take you to there. The thing I do want to point out for the W-2 forms and the federal forms, those can be printed on plain paper. So you do not have to have the red forms when you're using computer-generated forms for the payroll forms, right? For 1099s, you do have to have the blank forms with the red ink for the wording and the lines. And as I mentioned, you can get to this from the launcher. So you notice here's the new Sage 100 Cloud standard launcher, and you notice that there's an icon now, pretty big icon for order checks and forms, and it takes you right to a checks and forms page on Sage. So that kind of takes us through the process for legacy and for The new Payroll 2.0, you notice the Payroll 2.0, there weren't a lot of steps in there once you got past the updates because it's pretty straightforward. So those of you that are on legacy, that are on versions 2016 and 2017, that are maybe interested in the upcoming year of getting into either the 2018 version, which is the one out now, or I'm sure they'll be shipping the 2019 release of Sage 100 Cloud probably within the next quarter. Maybe sometime in the next year we can look at visiting what's the next step for y'all for doing an upgrade. And so I know I've gone through the steps, if for undertaking a payroll. But as always, I just wanted to reemphasize that we are out here to help you with the process. And in keeping with our motto of having clients as self-sufficient as they choose to be, we do stand ready to look over your shoulder and help with any of the facets of any of the use of your software, which includes working with you to get the payroll updates installed and applied, backing up the systems, and stepping through the process for the year end. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over to Lori and see if there's any questions.
Hi there. I do not see any questions to this point. Actually, Kay, do you have a question? You should be unmuted if you want to talk. I think we may have a question, but I'm having trouble hearing her, so we can follow up with you afterwards if necessary. There do not appear to be any other questions.
Okay.
Okay. We want to thank everyone for your time. And like I said, we will be sending out both the PowerPoint and the recording for this event to everyone for reference. And actually, we do have a question here. Are the steps for Payroll 2.0 the same even if you switched from Sage 2018 to Sage 2018 Payroll 2.0 mid-year?
Yes. I mean, when we switched, all the information for processing the year end was brought forward. So it brought over whatever quarter we're in. It brought in that quarter, and then keeping all of the year-to-date information going forward from there. So yes, with even if you switched in recently in mid-year, you've got what you need to do the year end.
Wonderful.
I might mention, Lori, too, at this point that we are taking reservations for assisting with upgrades like we usually do every year. I know we've got a couple of clients that have already asked us to fill in some time slots for helping with the update and the copy process. So I'd like to mention that Lori would be happy to coordinate any, if anybody wants to set up any time for us, because I know it gets kind of compressed here at the end of the year. If you just work through Lori to help coordinate what days you'd like that be done. Lori has access to the calendars for Jim, Jeremy, and myself, and we can all help with the year-end process.
Absolutely. All right. I think that is all for right now. So we will go ahead and end the webinar. I hope everyone has a great day, and you can look for this information within the next 24 hours. Thank you.
All right, thanks.